special.
Mm.
And I was just eager to get it underway. I felt like I could relate to the players because the age gap wasn't huge, and we had a really good team at the time. Saturdays has always felt a little bit more like an objective. It's always felt a little bit more like a job than Sundays.
Keeping during lockdown?
Busy, to be honest. I've been trying to just occupy myself in other ways. I was taking an online contracts law course. I've got a new business, a sports management company that I've started. I've been growing that during the lockdown, growing my networks from both players and club perspective. Scouting, building things in the background. So yeah, it's actually been quite busy. It hasn't really been as relaxed as some might think.
That's amazing. So tell me a bit more about your business. So you scout players into the pro game.
So basically, I've had sort of a history of helping players into different teams. This was primarily in non-league football, just through me knowing managers, just through me knowing a lot of players. And over the last couple of years, especially, I was playing for Sutton Common Rovers. I brought quite a few players into there, but other teams, Corinthian Casuals is another team I used to play for. And I've actually managed there as well in the reserve setup, and I've sent some players there. Loads of teams. I could honestly reel off quite a few teams. And basically I was just sort of dubbed with a nickname, just a non-league agent. And I was just doing it out of the love of helping players, because for the most part it was players that I knew, and it was with managers that I knew. So naturally, the natural progression was to actually take that up into a formal capacity and turn that into a career and actually become an agent. And that's sort of, well, it is what I've basically done. It's growing a company, linking and liaising with the clubs, spotting the talent. Some talent I already know about, and I'm already helping. And in other cases, it's about finding new talent. So I've got a software that a lot of scouts use when comparing players. First thing they'll do is they'll type in a player's name into a bit of software, and lots of information will come up on that player, videos, past teams, key stats. And a lot of people don't realize it, that when they're being scouted, before a scout, for the most part, even considers coming to watch a game, they will type in your name on some software. And from that, they can say yes or no, just from that alone. So yeah, I've been growing that during the lockdown. And it's getting to a busy period, as it would be summer. A lot of leagues cancelled. Some leagues are going to be resuming, as we know. So yeah, it's just been getting that in place, ready to sort of hit the ground running.
So how hard is it as someone who's building up your business and as a scout? How hard is it to actually find the right players?
It's really tough. It's really tough. A lot of people that I've spoken to and familiar with, they will come into the industry, and what they will do is they will build up relationships with the clubs first. And that's not a bad thing, but building up relationships with clubs is actually the easiest part of the job. The hardest part of the job is finding a player. I think, from academies into the professional game, sustainability, there's only about 0.5 to 1% that actually, England is ridiculously competitive for professional football. Everybody wants to make it here. Everybody wants to play here. And because of it, there's so many people trying to get in the English market. It is really difficult because different teams want different things, different styles of football. Leagues play different way. So it's tough. It's finding that balance between saying, all right, I'm going to have a large number of players to cover all of this. Or, if you do that, you're going to give yourself more workload. Or I'm going to actually have a smaller amount of higher quality, but then it's harder to find that higher quality as well. So it is really difficult. It's not as easy as people think. And And despite knowing a lot of good footballers, you soon find out that it is really hard to get from scout to chief scout to whoever it is that is going to sign off the piece of paper. You know, whether it's the whether it's the manager, whether it's the director of football, whatever it is quite a long process, especially when they can't go out and view games because of COVID-19.
It's interesting. I mean, I've done personally my talent identification level 1, and I've done a bit of research into it and how to scout and stuff. Obviously, because I coach at scaffold level, and I also coach kids, so I like to try and build my knowledge. But it's interesting because I can see in you that you're passionate about it. So I hope it really goes well for you, and I hope it builds and becomes successful for yourself.
I appreciate that.
You was a player before you was a coach, right?
Yeah, I was a player, as we all are. I don't know, I had a decent run. I've been through Hendon, Tooting and Mitcham, quite a few clubs, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people tend to play for a lot of clubs in that sort of Ryman circuit. I didn't get a scholarship from Charlton when I was younger. That didn't happen for me. And then I got a really bad injury, and injury sort of plagued me for a little while. And I took a really big break from football. It was a couple of years where I was diagnosed with arthritis. So I hadn't played football for a couple of years. And then I ended up at SCR. Funnily enough, the time I decided to come back to football, I had a lot more offers to play at teams than I ever thought I would. And I went to a trial down at SCR. My mindset was, look, I haven't played in a while. I can't come with the attitude of, I'm not trialing for anyone. It doesn't make sense. Went down for a trial. And from there, me and the manager sort of hit it off. And then that was it. I ended up playing for Sutton Common Rovers in the Combined Counties Prem, and pretty much stayed there in that sort of level and division for a couple of years. I think it was about three years, maybe 4 years. I think probably 3 years is a bit more accurate. And then bowed out, call it a day. It's just getting more and more difficult. You know, I was trying to balance at times playing Saturdays with playing for Kenningwell. I played for Kenningwell for quite some time. So I was on and off for a little period. And then sort of my last year with Kenningwell was not season gone, the season before. I came back for the second half of the season where we had won the league. So, and then after that, my body was just like, I'm done.
So what position did you actually play?
Well, when I was, as a kid, I was always a centre forward. And then I ended up being moved into centre back and spent pretty much all my years playing for Hendon and pretty much trialing with clubs as a centre back. And as the years went on, I found myself moving higher and higher up the pitch again. So I went from centre back to right back. But I used to have a bit of pace on me, and from right back, I went to right wing at Tooting and Mitcham. Had an injury there, didn't work, and then Corinthian Casuals. I was there for a little bit, predominantly as a right winger, and then moved back up top. I just felt that after I'd got injured and taken a break from the game, the running I couldn't do as much. I hadn't ran for a while because of the injury, and I thought, let me try to protect myself a little bit, and do a less demanding role in terms of up and down, and went up top, and then just saw out the rest of my days up front.
How was your days up front? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was good. Wasn't too bad. I'd still managed to retain a little bit of pace. So my first couple of seasons, my first 1 or 2 seasons at SCR was still quite lively. Then the metabolism slows down. Don't lose weight as much. Put on weight a lot easier. You get a bit bigger. You try to balance it out with gym, and I just said to myself, the running isn't really working. Let me just just tried to fancy myself a bit as a target man. It's the same as at Kenningwell. Pretty much did the same, went from right back to up top, and yeah, it wasn't too bad. Yeah, I had a couple of goals along the way, and some good memories. So yeah, no complaints.
If you had to compare yourself to someone in a pro game as a centre back, who would it be?
As a centre back, do you know what? My biggest regret is moving from defence, not from centre back, from right back. I was a really handy centre back. I was a really decent centre back. Who would I compare myself to? Oh, that's a tough one. I would say, someone like a Yap Stam in terms of when I was at centre back, I was really no nonsense. I wasn't really your ball playing centre back in the sense where you know, as the game evolved and centre backs had more ability at the back, and actually the demand for them was to be able to play as much. My game at centre back at the time was really just no nonsense. Just I'm gonna make you think twice every time you sort of, you know, get the ball and you're anywhere near my zone. I was pretty dominant in the air. I was really quick at the time, so you know, a foot race. I'd always favour a foot race as a centre forward, trying to have a foot race with me. And I used to love a big tackle. That ultimately, you know, didn't help the ankle in the long run, but yeah.
So basically, if you're flary, you're getting two-footed.
basically, if I see any sort of shimmy, if there's any sort of step over, if there's anything that could end up on Showboat or YouTube or any of those sites, lad Bible 433, whatever it is, we're not having that around here.
But that's the traditional centre back, and it's rare to see them nowadays.
Yeah, I put out a statement. I actually think the art of defending is on a decline. I actually think the quality of defenders in the modern game, I think back in the day, the quality of defenders was a lot better. Although we've got a lot of good strikers now, you know, even when I was helping players into non-league teams, managers would say, I want an attacking fullback. I want an attacking left back, right back. They'd always throw attacking in there. Now, centre-backs have to be able to play. They have to be able to, you know, I want a ball-playing centre-back. You know, and, you know, there's no criticism to that in terms of teams want to keep the ball on the deck and play football. But back in the day, your primary concern was, I want a no-nonsense defender. I want a defender that loves defending. I could care less how silky he looked at it. When you look at players like Tony Adams, who won't be revered as, you know, as technically able as someone, I don't know, such as Virgil van Dijk, but Tony Adams got the job done in every form and way. He was no nonsense. You know, he wore his heart on his sleeve. And that kind of defender, I feel, is being phased out of the game, you know, with preference for people who have more technical ability. So I feel like defending is sort of on a decline.
Do you think that will evolve back into the game in the future?
I'm not sure. For the foreseeable future, I don't think so. I think the pace of the game is growing all over the world. I think leagues that used to be predominantly really slow are becoming a little bit more, you know, high in tempo. And a lot of teams are really trying to adopt a total football style. I think the more and more teams see that blueprint, when you look at teams that dominate their respective leagues that tend to play football a certain way, I feel like other football teams will try to replicate that, and that will start from the back as well. So they will. I feel like if you had the option of a Tony Adams or a Virgil van Dijk, I think more teams now will want the Virgil van Dijk, and they really want that centre half who can pick it up from the keeper, who can play it out, who can receive it under pressure, who can do these things. I think they really want that attached with their centre half. Me, as a manager, I would want my centre half to help my goalkeeper keep as many clean sheets as possible. That would be my primary concern. I couldn't care less if he couldn't do 20 kick-ups. if you can't get past him one-on-one, if he's going to win every header, if he's going to be a leader at the back, I don't really care how silky and how skillful he looks.
It's interesting because, as you say, the modern game nowadays actually wants all ball-playing kind of players in every single aspect of the game. Even the keeper has to be a ball player nowadays, which is hard, because back then it was keeper has to save it, and he has to save it, and that's it. If he gets the ball out his feet, he should stand long. But if you had any kind of like tips for young players now, who are trying to get into the pro game and trying to meet their dreams, let's chasing their dreams, what's the one main tip you would give them as a scout?
Document your journey. Document it as best as you can. Because I'll give you an example. Traditionally, a lot of scouts will prefer to go out and watch the live games. That goes without saying. But let's talk about this situation and coronavirus. Everybody's in their house. Everybody's on lockdown. So how do you get scouted when there's no football being played? The only way is if you've got some sort of footage in some sort of way. I think the same way people document their weight loss and their muscle gain journey, and people look at it and are revered, and they're like, actually, I want that personal trainer because look at his Instagram and look at his journey and look at his I can see that. I think it's the same with young players. As much as you can document your journey, document it, because that will show how determined you are. And it's not just from games. I'm talking about practice. I'm talking about what you do in your garden. I'm talking about everything. That will show your determination. It will show your progression. It will be able to show someone, actually, in a year, he's gone from never being able to use his weak foot at all to actually being able to use it in 70% of situations. I find that, a lot of scouts are, if they're not on this software that they use, they will say, send over footage. I had a lot of people during this time say, send over the footage, send over the footage, send over the footage. I know some really talented footballers that don't have any footage. And a scout then has to decide, are you going to be top of my priority to watch? At least if you've got something, a scout can say, there's enough there for me to say, I'm now going to go and watch you. So my advice, if it's going to be one piece of there's lots of things I would tell a young footballer in terms of attitude, in terms of determination, in terms of mental, in terms of the way they eat. There's lots of things. But as we are evolving and we are becoming a more visual society, I think documenting what you do is really important.
Touching on the mental stuff, how it's very tough to stay mentally clued on in football, because there's always a player that tries to get into your head, and you have to be mentally tough to be able to just shake that off and ignore it. So coming up with young footballers, how important is it for them to get into the program being mentally tough?
It's vitally important, because you are coming up against the best of the best at that time in the program. If you are in a professional setup playing against other professionals, this is what is deemed as the best right now, unless you are replaced or the opposition has different players. Right now, you are at that level, at that specific age group, wherever it is, you are the best that it has to offer. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of kids waiting to take your place, that scouts are looking at, that managers are hearing of. And you have to understand that consistency, not just in your playing, but in your mental state, is a major factor of what will keep you there and elevate you further. There's nothing wrong with losing. There's nothing wrong with failing. There's nothing wrong with the other side of the game. In fact, it's important that you do, because if you're always used to winning and then you get to some really important stages where things aren't going your way, you won't know how to react. So I feel the earlier you experience sort of not getting things your way, the earlier you've experienced both winning and losing football games, winning a final, losing a final, going through that 360 of emotions, the better it is for your maturity and your development, because you've got to know, as let's say a 15-year-old, I could have another 15 years of this. Okay, I'm really disappointed, but what am I going to do to affect the next 15 years? What am I going to do to make sure that I'm in a better position than I was last time? What am I going to do to make sure? These questions you have to ask yourself. There's nothing wrong with having a bad game. There's nothing wrong with not making it. You know, you're having a trial and you haven't necessarily made that trial. There's trials happening every month, every year. You know, these things will come and go. So I think that mentally, as a young player, as parents, as older brothers, as mentors, you know, in the community, there's lots of them. We need to be educating them on, look, this will take you the extra 2-3 years that your legs won't. And that's why people talk about football intelligence, where your body slows down. You have to get smarter at the game. Your mental capacity has to kick in. So it is absolutely major. I think that, you know, more training sessions done in football academies and grassroots across the board need to focus on, actually, in today's training session, we're going to view some footage. We're going to go through what we were going through as a team mentally, what were our thoughts, how can we overcome this? I think that is a part of the game that sort of gets skipped out a little bit and is really important.
So would you say the FA should introduce that into the tutoring courses? So like the FA level 1 coaching, level 2, they should introduce that into coaches and try and teach coaches to kind of coach that into players.
I mean, they talk about the 4 corners: social. They talk about psychological, you know, which would cover the mental. They talk about technical and physical. They do cover on it briefly, but I don't think as in depth as they should. I feel that coaches should more and more, and I think maybe it potentially happens further up the ladder. You know, as you get closer to your sort of category 1 academies and things like that. I think that there should be more training around the psychological and mental aspect of a footballer. You know, some time away from running and drills and things like that, and more time of replicating situations, talking through situations, you know, understanding how each player felt in a situation, why they react like that. And you know what, it can be time consuming, but that could be the difference between a player elevating to that next level and learning to overcome certain barriers and not overcoming barriers. We live in such a fast-paced game where, unfortunately, you know, you've seen it with managers. You have 5-6 bad games, you can get sacked. Just like that. You know, everybody needs to talk to someone. Everybody needs to vent some way. Everybody needs to release in some way, and not enough chances are being given. People, it's like a, you know, big rotation of players and managers. It's a revolving door, and in one, out the other, in one, out the other. I think that's a lot of the reason why, to some European nations, we are not seen as superior. Although people say the Premier League is the best league in the world, you know, do England have enough World Cups, European Championships to their name? Whereas you look at other nations, and they have a lot more than we do. Everyone's style is different. I think, you know, to stop that revolving door and to stop people coming in and out so fast, we need to actually invest more time into the mental and psychological side of things.
I totally agree. I think it's important that it goes into the coaches as well as players, because coaches are, if you say, role models of the club. So they are what the players look up to, and they listen to the coaches, and then they put it into games. So I think coaches do need to be taught that, and they need to do their own self-learning.
Yeah.
But going into coaching, how did you get into coaching after playing? Where did you start off?
Do you know what? Funnily enough, Kenningwell were the ones that sponsored my coaching badges.
Oh, wow.
When we talk about a club that's a family club and a club that gives back, you know, they were the ones. If not for Kenningwell, I wouldn't have had a coaching career, because they funded it, they paid for it. I was still playing at the time, and the people who were in charge at the time, not just me, it was a couple of players, felt it would be beneficial if Some of the old school management went on, the courses, get up to date with new techniques being used in training, and they paid for it, and I just sort of took it from there. Um, I managed to get a coaching role with Corinthian Casuals Reserves, and I ended up being assistant manager there. I was actually offered to go back and sort of run the reserves. James Bracken at one point wanted me to run it with someone else. There was a gentleman called Will, who would eventually take it over. I was assistant manager with a gentleman called John at the time, and he sort of offered, me the chance to do that and further my career. I think coaching was both a blessing for me, but at the time, because I was still playing and still wanting to play, I was a little bit conflicted. I've never really, although I've got coaching badges and I've taken so many coaching sessions for different, teams, I just didn't, I don't know if I could sustain it for long enough. I always had the temptation to want to then just jump in and play. The urge to stop the coaching and join in would always kick in, and it would hinder me as a coach, because I would stop looking at things objectively as a coach, and I'm too focused on wanting to jump in and be a player. So I've coached, at Corinthian Casuals, Kenningwell. I used to take our pre-seasons every year, and I coached a little bit at Sutton Common Rovers. And I think there was a point in time where I knew it wasn't going to be something I would pursue as a career.
Why? Is it because of the want to play?
At the beginning it was. I think as I've gotten older, and obviously that playing, the reality of me playing obviously is now none, because I've stopped. I don't know. I get more of a buzz out of taking someone and putting them into a dream setup. I like the evolution of players. I like the development of players. I like that. But I think I'm both patient and impatient at the same time. So a part of me, doesn't want to spend 3-4 years to see development and change. A part of me wants to take someone who's been told, you're out of a club, no, 50 times, and say, let's work, let's get a goal, let's see if we can get you back to this level within 6 months, a year, whatever it is, and just helping them get back there and doing that. And that's why I was so fond of helping put different players into different teams. That came a lot more naturally to me than the urge to go out and coach. That I have to go with what comes to my gut and what comes more naturally to me. And as the years went on, my coaching badges just started collecting dust, and my reputation for helping players just grew. And from there, I just didn't look back.
So playing and coaching, how long did you coach for? Was it a few years?
Yeah, it was a couple of years. From about 2015. Maybe a bit earlier, potentially a bit earlier, maybe 2000. Well, if we're talking about from a semi-pro perspective, it was probably from about sort of 2014, 2015. Kenningwell got my badges quite early, so I was always taking pre-seasons for Kenningwell for quite some time. So probably about 7 years. So I'd say overall probably about 7-8 years.
So going into your first job in management, what was the toughest part about actually going into it? Did you feel anxious about going into management when you first did it?
Do you know what? When I first went into it, I was quite excited. It was with Corinthian Casuals. I was at a club that I'd played at, a club that I loved and still love to this day. I still hold really good relationships with people at Corinthian Casuals. I'm really fond of the club. And everything was familiar to me. And, I came up through the reserves. So the chance to coach the reserves for me was, we had just had an influx of players from Woking's youth team, because then the first team manager had come from Woking. So I had Charlie Carter playing for me in Corinthian Casual Reserves, who is now a fully fledged first team player at Stevenage. So going it from seeing someone like that who I've coached at reserve level, for Corinthians, there were some players you could look at and you knew that player is going to go somewhere. Even our goalkeeper, Matty Pearson, ended up as Tooting Mitchell's first team goalkeeper. There's some really good stories. So for me, it was really good to get my teeth into it. I did have a little bit of an old school feel in terms of the way I sort of projected things. I was very animated, very emotional. But again, when you get into the men's game, you have to get used to that very, very quickly in combination with being given tactical information.
So how hard is it to give young players tactical information?
It can be a challenge at times because as a young, talented footballer, and I think lots of us are guilty of it, there's a kind of I know it all mentality. And you will usually find that young players with ability tend to respond better to someone who's either played at or coached at or been at a level they're trying to achieve. So when you've got a setup, for example, like Rising Ballers, when you've got someone like Mahrez who's running Rising Ballers, who is a former international at youth, who former Fulham, he's played at top level. It's easier for a young person with talent to listen to him because he's been at a level they're trying to achieve. When you've got a manager, Dave, from down the road, who may have gone through and got his badges honestly and loves the game and loves the sport and actually has really good knowledge. As a player, you might look and think, well, all right, mate, I'm not going to be at this team very long. Or, you have different thoughts and you have different... So it was, to be fair, I've always had a good relationship in terms of coaching. I've always felt that wherever I've gone, I've had good relationships with the players. That's not to say I had a blistering career. I think it's been more of because I coached at a young age, I was able to relate to them. And because I was still or not far off playing, I could understand things from a current player's perspective and understand situations. And I have that cliche, I know what you're going through, because I really do, because actually I'm still a player myself. So I can advise you on how to get through certain situations. You have to, as a young player, no matter whether you like the coach or manager or don't, they're there to do a job. If they're not good at their job, believe me, it will be found out and change will be implemented. One of the biggest things that a club likes to see is a player that will listen and absorb information. Irrespective of whether the manager's right or wrong, there's a hierarchy in football. And as a young player, you have to listen to your coaches. You have to listen to your manager. Pro clubs will pick up on that. They really will.
It is important. But one thing I've heard over the years is facial expressions. And how if a player does a mistake and how his attitude towards that mistake and his facial expression talks a lot. Can you kind of advise young players on that?
Yeah, I mean, facial expressions and body language, you can always look and tell a player is losing interest or losing confidence, losing the will, this. And on the flip side, if a player looks up for it and looks, what your face and your body projects a lot. It projects a lot, whether you mean it or not. So if you're coming into a halftime team talk and you're not engaged with the manager and you're looking away or your body language is turned away and slumped, managers will pick up on it and they don't like it. No matter the situation, you have to be looking like, okay, we're not in a good situation here. Let me absorb the information that's going to be given to me. Let me look motivated. Because all it takes is one down face and it's like a virus. The person next to you might look and say, well, he's not really on it. He's my centre half. He's my partner. I can't carry us both. So he's having a stinker. Guess what? Let's just call this one a write-off. I'm going to have a stinker. Next thing you know, it spreads throughout the team. Whereas if you've got focused faces, you've got optimistic faces, you've got energetic body language, and picking people up and keeping, they say you're only as strong as your weakest player. It's a team sport. It's not tennis. It's not golf. It's not a sport where just you alone decide. So, your body language, your facial expressions need to show that regardless of what's going on, we're going to work, we're going to listen, we're going to look to improve, we're going to look to build. That's in all situations. You can't hide disappointment. We get that. You can't hide certain things, and we're not saying to hide things, but get over things as well. If a decision's being made, if you've been subbed and you don't like it, sometimes managers like to see disappointment because it's like you care. You care that you're coming off. You're supposed to care. But don't then come and mope and have your head down. Support the team. You're there. Your chance will come. These are the kind of things that are really, really important. So, you have to always show yourself to be wanting to move towards the team objectives. And that's with body, face, everything.
So do you feel like your playing career helped you within your coaching career and then into your scouting career?
Definitely. I took a different look at coaching. I always coached and said, I really want to not just be given lots and lots and lots of information. I want to be coached as though this person really knows me. And that's always how I wanted to coach players. I always wanted to feel like, let's talk, forget football for a side. What's going on? Is everything all right? Is school good? Is family good? Are all these things good? Because that's what I wanted as a player as well. I wanted to be able to be spoken to. I wanted to, I was there to play football. I was there to be coached. But I always felt that I played harder for managers I had that relationship with. It didn't feel like a job. It didn't feel like an occupation. It felt like a course. So if I've just got a manager that you only really speak to when it's regarding football, that's it. It's football, 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 nothing else. To me, it just felt like clocking in at a job. You come, clock in, you go, you clock in again, you go. When you've got someone that really coaches and takes time to coach you as a player and a person, that's when I felt like I'll run through brick walls for this person. I'll put my body on the line for this person. I will do everything I physically can. Even if I'm not necessarily the best in this area, I will try to excel in this area for this person. So, that's always what I looked for. So my playing career did help. Out of my sort of circle, my friends, I wasn't the most technically, adept. I wasn't anyone that you'd look at and say, oh my God, wow, wow, wow. I always had better physical attributes in terms of speed, power, strength. Those were sort of what helped me. But I always wanted to be coached and spoken to in areas that I wasn't so good at and encouraged. And, I knew I wasn't in however many years going to learn to be the next Ronaldinho. But I also wanted that to be acknowledged. And I also wanted, not to be spoken at in a condescending way because of that. So I felt that those experiences as a player helped me as a coach sort of be a bit more of a man manager and a man, one-to-one coach.
Do you feel like the likes of like Diego Simeone, Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, do you feel like they're the kind of managers that have brought this into the game?
I'll be honest with you. I feel like Arsene Wenger really started it. I feel like Arsene Wenger really. There was always really good football being played. Let me not get that one wrong. All over the world, the Dutch are famous for it. They've always played a total football kind of style. But in terms of my memory, in terms of what I see, for me, Arsene Wenger really was the first manager I looked at and said, regardless of result, regardless of how much he's being criticised, he really cares about individual development and players as people, from what I could see. And he took stick for years. And people would say he always plays the kids in the League Cup. And we're always getting knocked out of it. But in terms of development, in terms of growing players, in terms of, all the young players I saw come up under him, I was like, this is obviously someone who cares. This is obviously someone who is taking an interest in their personal development as players and as people. And when he, was gone from Arsenal, it seems like that's when he's appreciated more and the things that he's done. And that's the case a lot of the time in football and in life. And I think a lot of managers looked at that and could see that and sort of adapted it potentially better with maybe how they conduct football, whether that's through player recruitment because they had better finances, whatever the reason. I felt like Arsene Wenger sort of paved the way for that kind of management from my memory.
So trying to like take your memory all the way back now. Who do you think is the best man manager to date?
I'd have to say Alex Ferguson because everyone brought into Manchester United, every player, every single player, and Man United won games in the tunnel. Before kickoff, Man United won games just when fixtures were announced. You know, I genuinely feel that maybe he wasn't as put your arm around the player as much as Wenger was, but he had an ideology, he had an objective, and he had a way of delivering it where no matter what team he put out, strongest, weakest, his teams would deliver. And that's not, I don't think that is as much as to do with ability as it is to do with the players really wanting to play for the manager. I felt that every person on that pitch really wanted to play for Sir Alex Ferguson. I think that he is, for me, undoubted in terms of man management and getting a whole squad of players. I mean, for example, I don't know. I've always said it to Darren at Sutton Common Rovers. I've always said it is near impossible to keep 4 strikers happy in one squad. Because a lot of teams like to play a 4-3-3 or a 4-5-1 now. They favour sort of having a 3 in the middle, and that will usually sacrifice 1 up top. So if you're playing a formation where you're starting with 1 centre forward, you've got 3 other centre forwards. So Alex Ferguson managed to keep 4 centre forwards happy with Sheringham, Solskjaer, York, and Andy Cole. And I don't know how you keep 4 centre forwards happy. I just don't know how you do it. I've not seen another manager do it and get the best out of those 4 strikers, whether they're on the bench or starting. You know, that always was something that I looked at and said, he has a man management skill, because centre forwards just want to be on the pitch and scoring goals. And whether they say it or not, they don't always enjoy seeing someone in front of them doing that, because they know I'm going to have to wait longer and longer for my chance. You know, so to be able to do what he done with the players that he's had, I think he's a phenomenal man manager.
Oh, he was unreal. I mean, having them 4 and keeping them all happy, especially where they could play probably anywhere in the Premier League at the time, it's crazy. But going into like now, you coach Saturdays and you coach Sundays. What's the difference between the two? Like, how do you prepare for a Saturday compared to a Sunday?
Sundays is always, you know, people will say Sundays has always been about meeting up with your mates, playing with your mates. You know, you might not get that chance to do it on a Saturday. You could be in a team full of people you don't know, and then eventually you become, you know, you build a bond. Sundays, you get to pick and choose. It's about playing with your mates. And yeah, that was definitely, you know, for the most part of it, true. I think Sunday football is evolving, you know, especially in South
100%.
London. It is becoming
100%.
far and far more competitive. You're now seeing, you know, a lot of Sunday teams getting pre-season games with Saturday clubs. Some Saturday clubs are starting to respect and understand that the level of players playing at a Sunday is phenomenal. And I think Sunday, you're now having to find that balance of keeping it very much, you know, you play with your mates, but actually, because so many teams are getting so good around you and the way it's evolving, you don't want to be a beaten stick in the league, even if you are with your mates, because it's different when it was very unpredictable and, you know, or one team always runs away with it, so the rest are kind of like, you know, fine, not a problem. Now it's like anyone can beat anyone. You don't know who's going to win from here to there. So, for example, if you look at the Orpington and Bromley League, which Kenningwell are in, I can't tell you the last time we've had a single team win the league 3 or 4 times. You know, like you'd look at Spain and it would always be Barca or Real Madrid. Now you can win it at different, you know, Kenningwell had won it, Kamazi had won it the year after. Bickley had won it the year before. It's like 3 different winners in 3 years, you know. So it's like it just shows that the way that the game is evolving. So from a coaching perspective on Sundays, you definitely now have to be more adept as a coach. You now have to definitely be more technical, tactical. Because when I first started playing, there wasn't really any of that. It was name the 11 and go out and do your thing. Now you have to set up in certain ways against certain teams. You have to, you know, at Kenningwell, we do have something, you know, we meet on a Sunday to Sunday. We don't train. But we like to go through tactics as best we can. Different types of corners, different types of free kicks, you know. So you can't just come in now on a Sunday, pick an 11 and say, go out there and play. Because you get turned over now. You get turned over. There are ex-professional footballers playing Sunday league. And there are players who are coming out of a Saturday team and a Saturday league saying, actually, Sunday seems a bit more enjoyable. And it still maintains a level of competitiveness that is going to feed me, you know, my hunger. In some cases, it's more competitive on a Sunday than it is in certain Saturday leagues. You know, the Orpington and Bromley is a ridiculously strong league. But there are other strong leagues, you know, out there, you know, the Croydon League, the Met League, you know, Woolwich and Kent, you know, they're all strong leagues in their own right. And they all have some ridiculously good teams and players. So, you definitely have to be able to coach now going into Sunday football. You can't just, let's just, you know, go out, have some fun. And I've long gone are those days.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, I think people want to watch Sunday football more than Saturday football. They would rather watch. They would rather watch that.
I think because the interaction is a bit more, you get a little bit more interaction from a fan's perspective as well. There's probably slightly less rules. And because you're not in a stadium as such, for the most part, some you know, clubs do play in a stadium setup. You feel a bit closer to the action. You feel a bit more part of it. And with the growing and emergence of YouTube teams, your opportunity to be there, be on the social platforms, have your voice heard properly, have your opinion heard, is growing. So actually, you know, you can see that, and it's easier to sort of just see these games. You know, in our league, SC Dons will post up videos every Sunday. So you at least get to see every team because they record every game. So you get to an understanding of different teams. It's not like that necessarily with every Saturday club. Not every Saturday club will record every single game, whereas SC Dons do. So, you know, you get to feel a little bit more part of it. So, yeah, it's only going to keep getting better and better as well. It's only going to keep getting stronger and stronger.
Well, I mean, some would say that Sunday league is a new Saturday league in today's day.
Yeah, I think if you're basing that on talent, I believe so. 100%. The biggest difference now is that you don't pay Sunday league players. You know, you can't put them on a contract. You know, you do that. That is probably, I mean, that's the biggest fundamental difference. That's the biggest fundamental difference is that typically you would go on a Sunday historically as well. You'd pay your subs, you know, and do it that way. But in terms of difference, honestly, I feel that a lot of there's a handful of clubs in the Orpington and Bromley that could hold their own with a lot of semi-pro clubs. And I think that if semi-pro clubs are open to building relationships and partnerships, Kenningwell has a beautiful relationship and partnership with Sutton Common Rovers, and it works beautifully for both clubs because Kenningwell have always had a long history of producing really good players. Sutton Common Rovers are evolving. They've gone from a team when I first joined, we were pretty much in and around the sort of bottom half of the table, to now a team that you expect to see top two. They put, they ground share with Sutton United, top facilities, and it works for both of us because the manager is a lover of grassroots football. He supports grassroots football. He supports Kenningwell and what they do. I mean, how many Saturday managers would rest players so that they could be fresh for a cup final on the Sunday?
Oh, wow.
You don't hear of it.
It's unheard of.
You just don't hear of it. You don't hear of it. And that is the stance that Darren took. And we just sort of funnel players to and between. And it works well. We keep it honest. We obviously don't overexert the players so that it affects them on a Saturday. And where Darren can help them and protect them, it works both ways. And if players, maybe aren't getting as much game time on the Saturday and we want to help keep them fit for Saturday, so when they're called up, we can bring them down to Kenningwell and they can keep a certain optimum level of match fitness and get games in time. And we played a pre-season friendly, and it was brilliant, between the two clubs. It was long overdue, and it was just brilliant. It was fantastic. The quality of football on the show, you would never think it was a Saturday versus Sunday team. The game ended a draw, and irrespective of the result, the football on show was absolutely brilliant. And it works for both clubs. It really does. And I think more clubs should take that stance. More clubs could benefit from it. I mean, Hive Town said that they didn't want their players playing on Saturday and Sunday. And about five of their players said, we choose Sunday. And they lost arguably the best striker in non-league football in Zach Ansah, arguably the most influential goalkeeper with George. They lost the spine. They lost their whole spine because of that. And then another team goes and reaps the rewards of it. So I feel like clubs should really be more optimistic and open-minded when it comes to Sunday League football.
I agree. I think Sunday League football is taking over slowly. I mean, as a Turkish background, I go and watch Turkish League football on Sundays. And they're a different breed. I mean, there's a club out there, I'm not going to say their name, but they pay their players every week.
I already know who they are.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And
I know what you're talking about.
My dad used to manage in the Turkish League, and the year he was managing, a club paid out £30,000 in a year for players. And it's just crazy. Like, Sunday League clubs are slowly starting to get into paying their players, and they pay more than Saturday clubs, which is crazy. But it shows how much it's evolving on Sundays and how good it actually really is.
I think from that perspective, it's a level of caring and wanting to win and growing the league and putting your name on the map as well. There's a lot of talk around football in South London, but North London and East London used to dominate football. When I was a kid growing up, that area used to dominate football, and then the tide has shifted. The best Sunday team I've ever seen is a Turkish team. And undisputed for me, there was no team near them, like nowhere near them. And I think that when you hear of some teams paying their players on a Sunday, I don't think it's out of malice. I think, it's an expense. It's an expense for that person or that club or whoever it is. And they want to be able to compete and put their team on the map, put their area on the map, grow football in that community, in that area, grow that team. And if they're willing to do that, then, I mean, I can't tell them no. I feel like you should segregate Saturday and Sunday, and I feel like you shouldn't pay the players, because then it kind of then allows room for the politics of Saturday to creep into Sunday. I think you should. I do think that shouldn't really be a thing that happens where you pay. But I think that, the love of your Sunday League football club, if that's what you're willing to do, and you are willing to pay out £30,000 because you love that club so much. You wouldn't do that if you don't love the football club. You wouldn't do that if you don't. So, I try to look at it from both sides of the coin. And that to me is obviously showing a love for the club.
But it's crazy. Like it was unheard of back in the day. Like you used to just turn up, like you said, just turn up with friends, kick ball, and go home by 12:45. Let's say you'll be at home back with your missus or wherever. But it shows how much football's evolving everywhere. Like even in East London, even though it's kind of dropped from back when it was, it's still at a high level where everyone else is. But going back to Sutton Common Rovers, we are coaching there. How did you get on in your first season?
As a player or as a coach?
As a coach.
As a coach, we were all right, and I came on the latter stages. To be honest, there wasn't really much for me to coach in terms of the team were already doing well. For me, it was a case of I was pretty stagnant. I wasn't playing, and I was watching. We was watching a game. I can't remember who against. I was sitting with the manager in the stands, and as we're pretty like-minded, and as we're watching the game, I can see certain things happening, and I'm vocalizing it to him, but he didn't quite see that being vocalized from the people he wanted to see it vocalized. That's just me. I'm naturally, everyone has a different style of coaching, by the way. There's not, not necessarily shouting out things is always the right way. Sometimes shouting at a player or shouting an instruction, a player might automatically assume or correlate a loud voice with something negative that's about to be said, and it might automatically put their head down. I've had times where I'm trying to get information across. You're at the other end of the pitch. I have to shout, but as soon as you hear me shout your name, you think that it's something negative immediately, and you're already dismissing it. You know, so some players don't react well like that. Some players you have to just actually filter information through another player to then go and give to that player, or sometimes wait to half time, put your arm around the player, speak quietly, give an instruction that way. Darren, like me, is quite vocal. So when I'm vocalizing this, for Darren, I think it was a case of he was at a stage where he wanted to view games from up in the stands, have a different view and a different perspective, a more quiet perspective from himself, but he still wanted to maintain that assertiveness on the touchline. So he was just like, all right, well, look, come just be with the back staff for the remainder of the season. And that's what I did. I took a couple of training sessions and, helped out with the training and on match days when I could be there. But again, it was like, it just wasn't, it was enjoyable, but it's not something that I feel, it comes naturally to me to sort of delegate, but as a complete package, because coaching encompasses more than just delegating, it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't. So my attendance wasn't always great. So it's like I can't be a hypocritical coach. I can't be talking about effort and determination and hard work, and I'm not always there. And as a player, you probably think, well, who are you to give me any instructions? I didn't see you last week, and now you're here all of a sudden. Do you understand? So it's like there has to be some sort of uniformity in terms of I have to be there consistently. I have to be evolving as a coach just consistently through education, through learning and delivery. And I just wasn't really doing that, because I didn't really want to evolve and grow as a coach. It wasn't really in my plans. So it felt a little bit selfish. And after that, it was kind of like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. It was the right decision. I think at the time, it was another way of also, keeping me in touch with the club, because I love the club. I'm always promoting the club. And Darren always, wants me to have some involvement. So again, it was probably his way of saying, keep involved with the club then. If you're not playing, come and do this, we'll accommodate you in this way. So, and that just reflects now. I'm no longer coaching, and I stepped down in my management role, assistant management role at Kenningwell, back end of the season. So I think it probably deserves people who are going to relish the role and grow and continue to grow more than me. It felt a little bit selfish as well at the same time.
I mean, as far as I can see, you're a legend of Kenningwell. You're known as a legend. It's like the main man who was there. Like that's how I know you as a legend of Kenningwell, and a lot of people have respect for you, as I can see from social media, and rightfully so. What you're doing with the scouting thing is amazing. I respect that, and I hope you do go far, as I said earlier.
Appreciate that.
If you had to pick the greatest moment in your scouting career, what would it be?
Ooh.
I'll put you on the spot.
That's a tough one. That is a tough one. I don't know, because my scouting career from an official capacity is very young. It's still at the beginning stages. I think I think the best thing was just helping bring people to Sutton Common Rovers. I think for me, that really directly or indirectly helped the club grow. The quality of players that I was bringing, and it's not just about me bringing the players, it's about them staying there. Once I bring them there, it's not me to keep them there. The club, Darren as a manager, does a fantastic job of keeping the players there, providing facilities, the club being a family, feel club to it. So, it's not just sort of me, but the club itself provides everything: great photography, great social media, everything you could want as a player. But I think the quality of players I was bringing made it easier for other high quality players to want to be associated with the football club. And I believe they're now in a position where, irrespective of them playing in the combined counties, a really good quality player happily come and play for that football club. And I think that's part of not just the results, because when I was bringing these players, we weren't at the top of the league. We hadn't won a cup yet. We weren't high flying like SCR are now. But I believe that when you see certain names playing for a club and associated with a club, actually, like attracts like. So I think for me, that's been my greatest thing, being a part of and being able to help the club attract some really, really good footballers. And that sort of gave me a role as head of recruitment. I was given sort of a role there at the club. And it just got to a point where actually I was having less to do in head of recruitment, because players were wanting to come and play for the club naturally. I wasn't actually now having to go out and look for players or bring players in, because the quality of players that would ring Darren's phone or knock on his door spoke for itself. It just got to a point where it was like, well, actually, do you still need me now? Because, people know about us. They know the good quality players that we've had and continue to have. And that's it. So I think that gave me a platform as well in non-league as well, for players to come to me, off their own back and say, can you help me find a club? That really sort of set me up quite heavily for what I'm doing now.
No, that's amazing. I mean, the fact that you're doing what you're doing is amazing. Is there any, if young players want to get in contact with you and they want to be able to grow and obviously get into the program, how can they get in contact with you?
I am on LinkedIn. You can think of it as sort of Facebook, but for professionals, not necessarily just football. We're talking about sort of all working professionals. It's basically a networking site where people connect with other different people in different positions, in different companies, in different organizations. There's a lot of football people on LinkedIn. And there's also a lot of players on LinkedIn. So you can look for me on LinkedIn, just full name, Francois Gabidon. Just look for me on there. Also, you can email me, info@vision2, the digit 2, info@vision2venture.co.uk, which is the name of my sports management company, Vision to Venture. And primarily at the minute, those two are the best points of contact for me. I'm pretty outspoken on social media. You might get lost in one of my rants or whatever's going on if you contact me there. So yeah, I would say drop an email or visit the LinkedIn.
No, 100%, and everything will be in the description for you. So hopefully, players that are watching this do come in contact with you and obviously build your network a lot more. Is there anyone else you want to shout out? Any special thanks to anyone?
Yeah, just shout out to everybody who is sort of in the Orpington and Bromley District League. Obviously, my beloved Kenningwell. Thanks to Sutton Common Rovers for the partnership. from personal point, 247 London, which is a concierge service run by an SC Dons player, known as Lefty. He's got a concierge business, Believe and Achieve Tracksuits, which is run by a football player as well. Sort of your alternative to high street stuff. LV10, which is Kenningwell manager's clothing brand. Wavy Bakery, which is a black-owned business doing sort of alcohol-infused cupcakes. I think that's it from the sort of personal aspect. But look, if you're a pro player and not a pro player, you've been dropped out of an academy, or you're just playing Sundays or grassroots, ask questions. If you don't know, release, just whether it's through me, whether it's for a football club, whatever it is. I'm always happy personally to speak to players and give advice where I can. Big up, podcasts like yourself. Your Fresh TV is another podcast to big up, and Self Podcast, who are really trying to highlight grassroots football and what's going on. I like the visuals of what you're doing in terms of getting to put faces to names, which is really good, and which is really big. So look, just always ask questions. Always ask questions. Always look for advice. You're never too young or too old to stop learning.
100%. Frenchie, I appreciate you coming on today. I mean, you've put time aside to come on. I appreciate that. Just a quick few shout outs from me. Our sponsors, Chunky Meats, who deliver meats all across London. Our producers, Relative Music, who produce all our podcasts. And our partner of My Free Mind, who help with relationships, financial situations. And there's a life coach. You can find them on Insta, My Free Mind. Everything will be in the description. Again, Frenchie, thank you so much.
Not a problem, anytime.
Guys, that's it for today. Thank you and peace.